scheduled a community forum. We're expecting a few more people, but I'm totally happy to run through any questions or any of the information and detail that we have in the GM report for tonight. If you don't have a copy of it, it's on the back table. It's a book, yeah. One of the items that the board will be addressing tonight is there are new laws that are passed that change the election protocols for homeowners associations. Okay, so attached to this is a draft of new election procedures that comply with the new law. And those are going to be discussed tonight and then shared with the community. And then we normally don't have a board meeting in December, but we will be having a board meeting in December to approve those changes after feedback. Because if we change it before the new year starts, when the new law goes into effect, it saves us a considerable amount on postage and notifications, and that if we were to change it afterwards, we would then have to spend several thousand more dollars to implement the exact same changes. That's why that's there, because it needs a 28-day period from the time it's released for community feedback before the board would adopt it.
So will it be the fourth Tuesday?
So no, it's going to be on the Sunday after Christmas. Okay, so that'll be announced tonight. I think it's already announced. Wayne, did we put it on the calendar already?
Yeah, it's on
I think
the
it's already on the calendar.
Yes,
yeah. And then just as a general note, it's been very interesting, very busy several weeks since the PSPS incident. We have been having huge problems with the internet in terms of reliability from Northland Cable. Prior to that, we had actually a very reliable connection, but we're working on a couple backup alternatives to that. But that's actually taken a good amount of time and caused a lot of disruptions, impacts, issues with any number of things, but that's been busy with that. At any rate, I can run through the general manager's report in detail, or I can just open it up for questions and whatever topics people would like to discuss. I'm more than happy to discuss. So, if there are any specific topics that people have, why don't we just toss those out? And then we'll see where we go from there. Nothing in particular?
Go for
Okay.
it if no one else has any.
Okay.
I'm just going to take you seriously.
Okay, well, great. We always love that. And we will cover the general manager's report will be covered in the board meeting. It's just going to be covered quickly. We like to provide the opportunity for having question and answer, which isn't well suited to the structure of the board meeting. Okay, well, that being said, I'll run through a couple things that are here in the general manager's report. And so we'll start by looking at our financial information. You see the sheet about 4 pages in. It's the gray sheet, Yosemite Lakes Owners Association financial report. What that does is it shows us our current cash balances, and it shows us our current receivable balances, as well as a comparison to the prior month. We tend to historically draw down on our cash on hand about $100,000 a month, because we do collect a significant portion of our dues at the beginning of the year. So it is expected that our cash actually draws down over the course of the year. So that's normal and customary. If you look at our receivables, you see they did step up in the most recent month. That also tends to happen at this time of year. If you see a more detailed breakdown of cash, the next page shows, was prepared by Mark, and shows our cash balances year-to-year comparison. So you see in 9/18, we had, I'm going to go off of book totals versus bank totals, because the bank totals are what's actually in the bank, which doesn't include all checks that we've written if they haven't been cashed yet. So it's more accurate in terms of what we really have available funds to look at book totals. As you can see from September 18 to September 19, the amount of cash that we have between reserves and operating accounts is up, what is that, about 250, just a little over $250,000. And if you look at October, you'll see the book total for October of last year to October of this year is up just over $300,000. Part of that is because we're collecting higher dues this year to pay for the improvements in the park. Some of those expenses we've not incurred yet, but we will be incurring them as we go through the year. But that should give you some comfort that we will actually be able to pay for them and still be financially solvent. The next page actually shows you the trend from last year to this year over the 5 months, both for cash, which shows you where we are cash-wise versus where we were last year at the same time. And it also shows, the second graph shows the receivables comparison. We've been working very hard on receivables, setting up collection accounts, and the summary at the bottom of that page shows you what we've done with that. So far through October of this year, starting in June when we started this, so when we put this in place, we've actually collected $275,000 in past due assessments. All right.
What's still outstanding?
Still outstanding, the total receivable balance, which if you look back at the gray page, the total receivable balance is $887,000. Okay. But those numbers that we have set up on payment plans. So we've collected actually $79,000 in cash on past due receivables. We've set up payment plans for $195,000. So that $195,000 still shows up in those receivables. So it shows up as 718 is the over 1,800. Well, 25% of that, more than 25% of that, we've actually set up payment plans for. So it's a real positive movement. Those have been sitting out there for a lot of years.
So it dropped in October.
In terms of the payments that we received.
So is that somebody stopped?
Sometimes that's somebody stopping payment. Sometimes that's somebody that's actually paid off now, so they're not continuing to make payments.
How much of the $800,000 is collectible?
Well, we have payment plans on, most of that. It's a good question. Almost all of it is collectible. Because in order for properties to transfer, right, we get paid off. Now, if the properties are foreclosed upon, then we lose those assessments.
Have those been written off over the past?
They have not been written off over the past.
Why do you keep them on the books?
Historically, they've been kept on the books. We now do write them off, but we don't know. But until they are actually foreclosed upon, there is a chance that we can, that we can recover on those. We did write off about, I think it was $120,000 last year in this month of true uncollectible. Okay? And we make a provision now in our budget. We call it allowance for doubtful accounts. So we actually build into our budget the understanding that we are not going to collect all of the dues that we build. That's true of any association. We historically had put that into our budget. We had taken our dues and assumed we would collect 100% of our budget, or 100% of our dues, and when in fact we only collect 95%, it left a hole in our budget of several $100,000 because we budgeted with that full amount. We don't do that anymore. We now make an allowance for doubtful accounts of 5%, so that we budget based on assuming we're only going to get 95% of the dues in the given year.
When do you file the liens on it?
What's that?
When do you file liens?
We can. Our collection policy calls for us to file liens at about 180 days if we haven't entered into payment plans. And once the balance exceeds $1,800 in assessments, not counting penalties and late fees, or exceeds 12 months, if it's 12 months past due, at that point you can actually pursue what's called non-judicial foreclosure. And we actually have the right to foreclose on the properties that are that far past due. It's not something that's been done. I don't know that we've ever foreclosed on a property here before. It's not something that we want to it's not something that we want to do. We would always prefer for people to pay their dues or work out payment plans. But if they don't, it's not fair to those that are that we don't protect.
Does that take precedence over trustees?
It does not. It falls behind first deeds. It falls behind tax liens, and then it falls
Behind any file rate.
any file liens.
So we have assessment districts where I worked in. They took precedence over trustees, and they could do a foreclosure within 90 days when people would lose their property.
Yeah, like tax liens can supersede.
You don't want to foreclose on it if you're not going to get any money out of it.
Yeah.
So,
Well, what happens if you foreclose on it, if somebody has a trustee on it, they want to protect their interest, they'll come up with the money. Whereas the first, second, or third trustee, they want to protect because it wipes out everything behind that. They're losing the property to somebody that buys it.
That's a tax lien.
Yeah. No,
Yours was assessment lien. It's like a tax lien.
assessment, yeah, I like that.
So it is a complex and expensive process to do the foreclosure, and so you have to weigh that against the balance. But we have made significant progress in addressing these past due balances, and we are bringing on an additional staff person so that we can stay focused on this and continue to stay up on collections and move forward with the filing of liens and pursuing other collection methods, which could entail small claims court, getting a judgment, or it could include non-judicial foreclosures. So I think we had a question back here. So.
You say that you don't put liens on it normally to force people to be able to get your collectibles. Why not? You haven't done it in the past.
Yeah.
Why not do it now? If I've got a ward on me, I don't want to sit there for 18 months. I want to cut off now. It may cost me a little bit of money, but it's a headache that I don't have to deal with. And I would prefer paying $2,000 to get them out of here, get somebody in here that can pay their dues versus somebody who can kind of pay their dues when they decide to, and when we decide to have some type of a grace for somebody who really doesn't give a rip about my cash.
No, I absolutely understand, and we are, the new payment policy, collection policy that we adopted this fiscal year calls it for us to file liens. The process takes about 120 days before we file. So we're not waiting until we can foreclose on the property before filing liens. If I said that,
That's not what I'm asking. You just said we haven't in the past. I care about Are we
Yeah,
doing now?
yes,
And
we
then,
are. Yes, we
follow up with that, with what we have left over, of people we have set up on payment plans, is there a percentage of people who actually don't follow through with those payment plans? And slip through, and what are the recourses for those people who don't abide by their word?
Yeah, there is a percent of people that don't follow through. We have a couple of those right now. And then we file liens on those properties and
Okay,
pursue.
so you continue with the process.
We continue with
back
the
then.
process
They
at
get
that point.
do you get a chance, 2 chance, 3 chance, 4 chance, or is it a chance? Before you start, it's like, you didn't follow through what you're doing, we're moving forward.
Yeah.
Or do we play hardball like that, or do we just beat around?
Yeah, well, we have not played hardball in the past. And occasionally there are some unique circumstances. If people are willing to work with us, then that's part of the condition of their payment plans. If they contact us before they miss a payment, then we're willing to work with them. If they don't contact us, then no, we're proceeding to the next step and moving forward with the filing of the lien. And depending on where that is in the process, we'll pick up with the filing for non-judicial foreclosure.
Is there a secondary set of eyes of people who are looking upon those IOU people to make sure that we are not paying favors to family members, to make sure that we are not, they're going through a tough time, it's my brother, it's okay. I want to make sure that there's a secondary set of eyes who removes emotion out of the decision and looks directly at the books.
There is.
Guys need to follow this.
We have a written procedure for how we set up the payment plans in terms of what we're willing to offer. Any deviations from that will require approval from the board.
Gotcha.
Okay? And so, basically what we do with that is we are willing, okay? So if someone pays off, is willing to pay off the entire amount that they owe, we are willing to waive late fees and interest. Okay? We're not waiving assessments though. So because that would be unfair to people that actually, oh, you didn't pay us, so you're going to pay us less than what you would have owed before. We do not do that. We always collect 100% of the assessment. So if someone is willing to pay it off up front, we will waive the late fees and the interest, and we get the cash. And we've had a couple of those.
That's completely understandable. It's, I'll take your cash now, but I don't want to pay more. Because that cash that you could have paid in the overdraft could have screwed them for the next time that the associations come around. So I see that as good.
So the next piece we do is that we set up a payment plan that always has to cover, let me clarify. So in the past, if you don't set up a written payment plan, then what happens is you have to apply the dues to the oldest outstanding assessment. Okay? We write our payment plans now that we take the old balance and we set it, think about it, setting it over here, and we set up a payment plan on that. You then have to stay current on your current dues. That's your #1 requirement. And then you have to make a minimum payment on the outstanding balance. Okay? And if because we want you to stay current on your current dues, because we want that in this year's budget. We don't want to get farther and farther behind. And then when you do that, it applies to the oldest. What happens is people will pay just enough to always stay 18 months behind, right? Or not more than 18 months behind, or not more than $1,800, so you can't ever pursue that next step. So we've tightened that up. And what we do, though, with people that are willing to make payment plans is we will waive the late fees and the interest if they make and honor the entire payment plan. They stay current on their dues and they pay that off over time. It's much less expensive for us to do that than to, a bunch of other things. We will end up we have a couple situations where we will end up having, I'm sure, people doing some quit claim deeds. So you don't actually go through the foreclosure process. They just say, you know what, we can't do it. We'll just transfer the property over to the association. Then the association would sell that property to recover what the outstanding balance is, and get hopefully a homeowner in that pays the dues.
And most of these liquid accounts on undeveloped property.
A high percentage of them are on undeveloped property, yes. And I don't have those specific numbers, but yes, a high percentage of them are on
I have a
undeveloped property.
concern with the dues, the way it keeps raising it, because of the fact that there's people in here that are on fixed incomes. You know, they bought in here and they, like I did, the association dues was $900. Now you're talking about it's gonna be $2,000 a year.
Well, there's no future budgets are approved beyond what is approved for this year. You know, but it's interesting, if you look back over the history of the association, you will find that the percentage increase over any 10-year period of time is actually fairly consistent. What hasn't been consistent and how it's been done. So what happens is they keep dues low, 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 and then all of a sudden you go, we don't have enough money to fix things, we don't have enough money in reserves, and then we have to make big adjustments to catch up. And that's the situation we found
4 years
ourselves
ago,
in this year.
the association dues was raised 37.9%.
Sure, and if you looked over the 8 years prior to that, it was raised like 3%. It didn't even keep up with inflation. So that's the problem, right? If this would have, here's the deal. If over the last 20 years, okay, we would have added $2 more per month to our dues, $25 a year, over the last 20 years, if it would have increased 25 each year over 20 years, our budget today, we wouldn't have even had to do an increase like we did, and our budget today would be $400,000 more than it is right now.
John, do you have the breakdown of how the dues were increased the
Yes.
last 4 years? Because I have
Yeah,
it.
yes.
So I don't know what you have, but I have it.
Yeah.
And that has happened.
Well, there was one year,
One year, a couple years, we've reduced it.
yeah, one year they changed the thing by $2 a lot per year, 17 cents a month.
So here's,
And they gave money back one year, but they reduced it by 20 bucks a lot.
but here's where the challenge comes in, okay? Eventually, when we kick the can down the road, we end up in a situation where we've got to make big increases because we're trying to catch up for all the previous years where we didn't make any increase. That is hard on everybody, okay? The alternative is you get set up and then everybody should expect we're going to have a 2 to 3% increase every year just to keep pace with what inflation is. So when we get our budgets right, they're going to go up. You know, dues are going to go up a couple percent every year. But when you don't raise them over a long period of time, you've now lost essentially all of that interest and collections you would have done over all those years. So for example, if we would have increased just $2 a month, $25 a year over the last 20 years, okay, our budget today would be $400,000 more than what it was after we did this increase.
So will there be a point where we max out? Like, is there gonna be in several years when this is a number we're comfortable with? Because, how we stated earlier, there's a lot of people that live here on fixed incomes, especially some of the people on Social Security, and then that's gonna trickle into the unpaid dues because it's gonna raise so significantly that people that can't afford it today are not gonna be able to afford it, and someone who's been in their home 20, 30 years, they can no longer afford the home because there was such a lax in collecting that you're increasing so much now that they can't keep up with it financially.
So, and that's a very fair question and something that we're very concerned about. But if we get, let me address it in 2 points because I want to finish the last question and then address yours. So, if we would have done $25 more a year than we did, our current budget would be $400,000. We wouldn't have had to do any increase this year.
Correct.
And we would have $400,000 more coming in every year. Over the last 20 years, we would have brought in $11 million more in assessments. $11 million we left on the table by not just adjusting our dues for inflation. okay?
So the long term would be.
So the long-term effect is, we're trying to catch up on $11 million of dues that we didn't collect over the last 20 years, all right? And if we would have had that $11 million, we wouldn't be talking about how do we pay for the roads? How do we pay for the pipe? How do we pay for fixing the deferred maintenance that happened for 20 years? So that's the challenge, okay, is what do? Do we not fix the things? Do we not fix our roads? Do we not fix the clubhouse? Yeah, just a second. Do we not address those things? And then what happens? Well, then the value of our properties go down even further. In answer to the question, once we're on track, right, and things go up 2 to 3% a year on a regular basis, anybody on a fixed, people are on fixed incomes, generally, their income is also going up a small percent, right?
But so does the cost of living, so does the cost of everything
Sure.
in general. So that's just, I mean, for most of the people that live here and that have been here for as long as they have, to be pushed out because of a dollar amount being set, that it would be nice to know when is it going to be like, and then, you're also, proposing the rapid increase, which would make it even more significant of an increase than we already had of this year. So I just don't see how that could really be beneficial to a lot of the residents here, where then you're in a sense feeling like you're being pushed out of your home because of lacks in management that the owners had, entrusted. So we're saying we went 20 years without collecting and doing stuff, well then, therefore, the homeowner had entrusted that that would be taken care of and paying those dues every year. So that's where,
Sure.
I'll say there's a little argument to that is, those people that haven't paid for 20 years got a free ride. And now we're all paying for whatever happened in the
yeah,
past.
and I get
Sure.
that,
Yeah.
Sure.
It's a tough thing
add
to do.
something to that?
Well, just a second. Yes, Beata, you can, but let's address it, because it's a very valid concern, okay? And if we're stable, right, once we get to the level that we need where things are funded, and we have 20, 30-year plans, which is what we should have for replacing all of our long-term assets, it will be predictable, okay? And if you're in the range of a 2 to 3% increase, that's like what the income is increasing. I mean, it varies, right? I mean, sometimes the cost of living increase for Social Security, was it this year, 1.9%, right? Some years it's 4.5%, right?
It hasn't been that way for a long time.
It's not for several years, but it had, over the last 20 years, there have been years when it's been 5%. So,
The last 4 years, this was 4.83%.
cumulative, right. I know it's been small the last couple of years, but the point is that the percentage increase at 2 to 3% is a small portion of what that is. So the secondary thing that we did is we're setting up the program called YLP Cares, all right, to allow those that are better off, that want to help other homeowners that are in those situations, because that is a huge concern. And often this concern is saying, well, we don't want to put a burden on those on fixed incomes, has been the justification for not increasing the dues. Okay, and that's put us in the situation that we're in now. Right, so we have to increase the dues. The first job of the number one responsibility of the board, right, is to make sure that we are financially, that we are in a strong financial position and have adequate reserves to take care of the amenities and maintain the parks.
I mean, we live in a community, we all choose to live here, and we, all do respect the HA. With that, though, in our dues, everyone should pay what should be to fix our community. Will we start seeing more of those things fixed, as far as the roads, as far as the water system?
Yep.
Will that start actually being, instead of so far as hearsay, action? Like, will there be, if you're having the means, the funds to back it, is it something that's not going to just be talked about at this point?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Everyone understands they have to pay to live here, but with pain comes responsibility to concerns fixed for us.
Absolutely, you are 100% correct on that. Hold on just a second, I love the feedback, okay, but let's finish on one before we move to the others. So, absolutely, and you will see, you know, in this year we outlined as part of the Fix Our Stuff plan, which is a total of about $300,000. There are about 14 things we said we're going to take care of. And we've taken care of fixing the roof on here, we've taken care of fixing the AC, which saves us about $1,500 a month in electricity. We have the ADA bathroom plans being drawn up, which we expect to address in January. So you will see those things getting done. You know, the town hall we talked about with the roads. We've actually found ways to fund and pay for the equipment we need for the roads by getting more efficient within our current budget. Okay, because the number one thing that I'm always looking at is do we spend the dollars we have as efficiently as we can, and can we spend it to get a good return on investment? Because essentially that's what my job is how do we, you know, how do we prioritize these things and how do we pay for them? First with the money we have, but if we don't have the money, what's the minimum amount of money we need to get these things taken care of? And absolutely, if I don't get those things done that we've outlined, if you guys don't see progress on those things, you know, again, it takes a couple of years for us to see some of that stuff. But if you don't see that done, then the board should absolutely fire me.
John,
Okay? So, yeah, you have.
what I would like to add is, I have what we've been paying in dues for the last 30 years. I have on record. And a lot of homeowners that have been here less than 10 years are not aware of the millions of dollars that was lost from prior management. And I have a record of that. And we can't do anything about the past. I have every confidence that you're going to help us move forward. But what's hard when you can't, what's hard where the old terms cannot let go of the past is when you have someone making the comment, well, you guys are getting a free ride all this time, and that's why we're in this situation. The thing is, the homeowners are getting beat up then from all the mismanagement, from the millions of dollars that were lost, and now they're getting beat up again because you're saying you're the reason why we're in this situation. When a lot of it had to do with mismanagement. When we won a huge lawsuit, why wasn't that money put towards our roads at that time? What happened to all that money? You know? So you have all these things going on, but you can't turn around and say it's your fault because we're in the situation now. How can the homeowners be able to move forward when people like that are pointing their fingers at us?
And Beata, I think that's a valid point. And
Yes.
I hope you don't get that. I hope you don't get that impression from me.
No, I never have.
I don't.
Every confidence in you.
It's really not, you know, pretty much the only comment that I will say about prior management and prior boards
Right.
is I wish we could go back 20 years and make those small increases each year, because then it would have been painless, right? But it wasn't. So we're in the situation that we're in. Yes, there were some situations where we lost money in lawsuits.
Yes.
I can't do anything about that.
Oh, it's
What
not
happened?
only lawsuits, it's a lot of other things.
What I can do though is I can make sure that we update our HR policies. And I can make sure that we, you know, that we've tightened down those things so that we avoid, you know, as much as we can having that recur in the future. It doesn't, you know, it doesn't mean we won't face lawsuits. I mean, there was a period of time where we had, I know we had a handful of employee lawsuits that did cost us a good chunk of money. It doesn't mean we won't face lawsuits. What it means is though, and if we ever have a lawsuit, it's expensive just to respond to the lawsuit. So my goal is to even prevent the lawsuits from happening. But we will, it's just a cost of doing business. I've been in business, you get sued for things, even when you do nothing wrong, you still have to deal with it.
I kind of have a suggestion, and I know some other associations have done this, and it's not going to help me, but that's not what it's about. But there are some associations, what they do is they charge, they base their dues on what the square footage of their home is. So if you have a smaller home, a lot of times those people cannot afford to use all these amenities. The ones who have a bigger home, they can afford to use all these amenities, so, and they will be using the amenities a lot more than the smaller homeowner. And so they should base, you know, I'd see where they would base the dues on what square footage your home is.
Yeah, there are lots of different ways that you could calculate assessments. However, in order to change that, we would have to be able to change our governing docs. Which we have to get 1,130 homeowners to say yes to. Which we're going to talk about the proxy vote, or the vote about that issue tonight in the board meeting. But that's the only way we could consider those kinds of things or actually make that change. But I think there are ways, clearly there's a huge disparity in the value of homes in the park. We have homes that are, that are very meager, right? And we have homes that are very extravagant. But and we have homes that have 20 acres, and we have homes that are on slightly less than an acre. The dues, when this place was set up, are set the same for every property. And there is no way to change that unless we had the ability to change our governing docs. So I'm happy to come back with a question back here.
I do want to say that you have a valid point, that we need to stop pointing fingers, because that doesn't get us anywhere.
No, it
If
doesn't.
the past is past, you can't change it. My concern though is, again, is the raising of the dues at the rate that we're raising them, because not everybody has that amount of money. I get a 3% raise every year, so the dues going up more than my raise is an issue for me. Yes, I can handle the cost, but there are, again, like you said, people on fixed incomes.
Sure.
We're going to get people pushed out. Then what's going to happen then? Because if you've noticed this year alone, selling property here does not happen fast. And because you need a certain type of person to come out here. Not everyone wants to live up in the hills and everything shuts down at 8 o'clock. They like the convenience of, calling the pizza guy and all that kind of stuff. So if we have people vacant lots and vacant homes, we're not going to get any dues if they're out. So have you considered that pushing them out in that way is going to also leave us with no money at all? You won't even be able to collect that. So then, so we have, I think we just need to, I understand what you're saying, I understand everything that's gone on in the past and what we need to do, but maybe we need to slow down a little bit. Maybe not a 5% increase, maybe a 3% increase, because it's just not working for everybody in the park.
Sure, and I think that's a very valid point, and I think it's something that's well worth discussing. And we're going to be talking about budgets for the upcoming year starting in January. So we'll have a town hall at the end of January to talk about budgets and lay out a couple different options. So I want to provide guidance. Okay, when we created last year's budget, I provided some guidance. It was just guidance on what it would take over the next couple years to get to the place where we could fix our roads. Okay, so there's a lot more information that we've learned about fixing our roads and alternative ways to do it less expensively that have significantly reduced the cost of that. So that becomes an option to take a slower path towards addressing those. The other part about that is that by creating, I'm not quite finished with this part yet, and this is on me for not having it done, but the YLP Cares concept allows our community to provide support for those that are in situations where they're on fixed incomes or are unable to pay the increase in their dues, for example. So if somebody could sponsor someone else and say, you know what, either by name or just by making an extra contribution, saying, you know what, I want to cover the cost for somebody that's on a fixed income because I care about that part of our community, and I can pay an extra $15 a month to cover somebody else's increase. So we have a mechanism to provide for that, and I think we have a very caring community. The individuals that work here and some board members actually have contributed $5,000 of their own money for exactly that type of concept. Okay, so I think there are answers to all the things you're talking about, and I don't, you're going to have to be creative about it. But this is a, it's not, there's not a callousness to the board. There's not a callousness to the management approach. There is compassion, there is concern, and there should be discourse and discussion about how do we get to the place of taking care of our stuff and protecting the community that, part of the community that is on fixed incomes. I agree with you, that's an important thing to do. So, thank you for sharing that. I do hope you come in January, and we can, have more discussion about this very thing, so.
You're concerned sometimes about the management, though. I understand the problem of raising the fees and collecting and all that other stuff. How can we have like a restaurant that operates in a building that the association owns and loses $100,000 a year?
Okay, so it's subsidized more than that, and that's a question that's been addressed. That's what we talked about most of the time last month. I am more than happy to address that again, but we've been through that several times, so I'm not going to address it right here.
Give me the cliff notes on that, because 300, you just said that if we haven't raised our dues by X percent over the past 20 years, we have an additional $400,000. I can find $400,000 in labor in this budget right here by cutting back.
Well,
so don't tell me
if you do
can't
that, okay.
with the restaurant,
So-
that's losing $300,000 a year, that you cannot just axe it. Because I've been here for 2 years, and they did that restaurant twice.
Well,
Both
that's
times,
okay.
they were terrible.
Okay,
I would not spend my money here, it's not good food.
Okay. Well, you're in the minority in your opinion on that, which you're entitled to.
I have had multiple people say, I don't want to go here and eat. They come here and eat because it's
Time out.
convenient.
Whoa, hold on. Take it down a tone, please.
That's not where I was going.
Well, that's where I'm from.
And it's okay. Everybody is entitled to their, to their opinion on it.
Well, I'm entitled to my dollars. My dollars.
Well, except when you moved here, the subsidy for the restaurant was higher than it is today.
That's fine, it's still too much.
Well,
I think it
you
should be
believe
zero.
that, but you moved here with this as the centerpiece of the community.
Oh, this is a great clubhouse, the restaurants should belong here, especially
okay.
2 restaurants in a single place.
So,
Your square footage is being split.
So I-
Clientele in half.
I understand what your opinion is. I will tell you when this issue came up, I think it was 12 years ago, there was the biggest turnout, they wanted to turn that into a workout room. You had people lined up this clubhouse all the way out into the end of the parking lot. It was about 70% of people that absolutely going
Funny how they come
nuts
up for that.
about that issue. So what I'm going to say is we want to run the restaurant as efficiently as possible. It is part of the community and what was here when people bought in. A lot of people really value that. Not everybody, you obviously don't, and that's okay.
I mean, I'd have no issues if it was at least breaking even. It's
Okay.
not.
It's the restaurant, I'll tell you as a business person, you would never open a restaurant with this population density in this location if your purpose was to make a profit. That's why it was set up as an amenity.
I wouldn't let it just sit here and bleed. I'd apply a tourniquet to it and fix the issue.
Okay, I understand that's what you would have done. There are other people that would have done that too, but the majority of the community, okay, would not do that.
Okay, you're saying they wouldn't, but it's still losing money. If people love it so much, why aren't they here spending their cash?
We do.
They do. And they lose less.
It used to be more. We used to subsidize it.
All right, we're gonna move off of this topic. Obviously, it's a hot issue. Okay, obviously this is a hot issue. We have no problem having a dedicated meeting about just this. Okay, we got one more question over here, and I think it's time. We've got a couple minutes. So what? Sure. Okay, guys, we got a couple more questions, okay?
Anyway, I appreciate where he's coming from, even though I love the restaurants. Anybody who's way better than me, and they way better than me. Including you, Jonathan, I'm sure. But I also appreciate where he's coming from.
Sure.
Yeah, we can look at that and see, there's $300,000 right there, where if we weren't supporting the restaurants, and like I said, I love them, I do. You wouldn't have to raise the HOA dues at all.
Your home values would drop if you got rid of the restaurant.
Well, The other,
people is-
yeah, the other aspect of that, you know, guys, is called elasticity of demand, okay? You set prices at a certain level, right? Then you have fewer people coming. So it's a balance between pricing appropriately to maximize the profitability of the restaurant. But I know this is a hot topic. We'll set this one up as a dedicated conversation as town hall to talk just about the restaurants. So we can have representations on both sides and we can, have a discussion. So, yes.
Down in 40% of Fresno, in Madera County, they're building a whole city, 5,000 units. So it's going on now, there's another one going to start taking place pretty soon.
Yeah.
Now, I envision this place with new roads, infrastructure all done here. How much is that going to raise our value of our housing? I think it's going to go through the roof.
That's an excellent question.
It's not getting addressed.
It's an excellent question. I don't know that there's any, ideal, there's no definitive answer that we can give to that. But I would say that it would be higher than what it is now. But it's impossible.